Hello and welcome to the Duras Sisters Podcast. We are not Klingons, but we are sisters. And I'm Ashlyn.
And I'm Rhianna.
And today is our special Picard Week episode. We are so excited to be joined today by Matthew Kaplowitz from Trek Untold and Aaron Cocker from Enterprising Individuals. How are you both this evening?
Great.
Doing great.
Yeah, ready to talk about Picard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Rhianna and I both have our Picard as my chad each shirts.
Great,
We're
perfect.
ready. Yep.
I've got my Picard merch at the ready as well. I've got my
Yes.
Picard facepalm statue right over here.
Oh, he looks
Oh,
great.
That is
nice.
epic.
I have my sadly one-armed Gambit
Oh.
Picard. But
Oh, no.
Definitely Galen. Oh no.
yeah, I know.
He's
Poor
not
Galen.
doing well.
So today we are here to talk about Stranded Picard. I'm very, very excited to chat about this genre, very niche genre of TNG episodes today. But first, before we get started, start with Matthew. Tell us about Trek Untold and what you've been doing on Picard Week.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me on this episode. So my podcast, Trek Untold, is a weekly interview series. And each week what I do is I have someone come on the show. And that could be an actor, that could be a stunt performer, it could be a behind the scenes person like a visual effects artist or writer or director or anybody who's in and around the Star Trek universe. And we talk about what they do in terms of their contributions to Star Trek, but also who they are as a person, their upbringing, first their entire story around their profession and their life. And we see what they've learned, how it always ends up relating somehow in Star Trek, and just get to know these really awesome people. And what I'm doing this year for Captain Picard Week 2 is I'm going to be doing an episode called The Ethics of Jean-Luc Picard. And I did it with the Duras Sisters, as well as Hawk from Strange New Pod, and our friends over at the Treksperts quiz as well. So we had a really, really interesting, deep discussion there. A lot of brain-racking questions, I hope. And
Yes.
yeah, so that's going to be coming out on the 13th. So you guys can check that out on the 13th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on the Strange New Pod channel.
Very exciting. And Aaron,
Awesome.
tell us about Enterprising Individuals.
Yeah, Enterprising Individuals is a weekly show where I and a guest go into excruciating detail about the series, characters, and stories of Star Trek. And we also examine the social, political, and practical aspects of the Star Trek universe. So I've talked to actors from Star Trek, authors of Star Trek books, scientists and experts, usually selecting a particular episode that they want to talk about and then just going through everything in the episode. And those are what we do one week. And then the alternating weeks, we talk about specific topics from the world of Star Trek. The Prime Directive, the fact that there is money or there isn't money, how does the economy work in Star Trek, and just sort of like examining the entire thing, the Star Trek universe as a whole.
Wow.
That is
That's
awesome.
I love that all of our podcasts are like very in-depth niche, deep dives, So
Yeah.
this will be a really fun discussion today.
Yeah.
I feel like to make it in the world of podcasts, you have to have that
That
thing,
niche.
you know?
Yeah.
Some people like to do it
Absolutely.
casual. We like to go way too in-depth.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Absolutely. So just kind of diving into Stranded Picard, I have a question for all of you. And Rhianna, I'm going to start with you. So if you could be stranded, I'm going to say you can choose an episode to be stranded with. You can choose a planet, interpret the question how you wish. But if you could be stranded anywhere with any Star Trek character, who would it be? And would you survive?
Oh man, this is a fun question. And people who know me might not be that surprised. But I would definitely choose to be stranded with Spock, and I would love to have it be during the attached episode in TNG, so we could share a braid for a bit. I think that would be epic. I think he might think I'm a little bit of a freak because I love him a lot, but like I think that we would get out of the situation easy. We might even figure out that the people there are actually trying to help us and we shouldn't run away from them. Who knows?
Sure.
Or I could push Spock through the force field last minute, to save him. So
Sure.
that's my dream. I think
I feel like you
Spock
wrote this
and
fanfic
yeah.
already.
Oh yeah. Totally. So I just think that like we would make it out because Spock is very reliable and he's really a good person to be stranded with, unless it's Galileo 7, then there's some issues there. But
Yeah.
otherwise he has a pretty good track record.
So Beverly, I guess Spock in this role would have to like define the boundaries for you, Rhianna,
Yeah.
at the end. With the release,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah, I feel like we have to just be friends. I'm like, okay, I understand. Oh man.
Aaron, how about you? Who would you be stranded with?
I think that I would be stranded with Chief O'Brien.
Nice.
And the reason is that he seems like there's been a couple episodes where he's been stuck somewhere, and he seems like he's, as long as nothing is too dangerous, he's a fun pal around guy. He's pretty easygoing. Also, if you do have any trouble, any technical trouble, he's really handy. He could probably fix whatever the problem is. And let's face it, if something bad is going to happen, it's going to happen to him. So that way, I don't have to worry about anything bad happening to me, because he must suffer in that case.
Very good point. Yeah.
And if we had to be stuck somewhere in particular, I was just thinking, like, maybe we could get stuck in the Fairhaven program on Voyager. And then that way, eventually Hirogen Nazis would invade. But up to that point, he could take you on the pub crawl. He could show you all the fun stuff. He could tell you stories about being back home in Ireland. And so it'd be really nice up until the point that the lizard Nazis show up.
Sure.
I love this.
That's really awesome. Yeah. Put O'Brien in Fairhaven. That's perfect.
Sure. Yeah.
I see in the comments we have Wayner saying that O'Brien's the most important person in Starfleet, which,
Yeah.
can't argue with that. Yeah. And Matthew, how about you? Who would you be stranded with?
Yeah, this was a tough one for me to think about, because it was very much a process of elimination question for me, because I was like thinking about my favorite characters, and then I was like going through the traits of who they are, and I'm like, I probably don't want to be with them. Like, if I wanted to have Odo with me, that would be awesome in theory, because he could shapeshift or whatever, but then every 18 hours he's got to go into some kind of bucket somewhere to reshape. Plus he's just a grumpy pants. I'd love to hang out with Rom, but I don't think I want to be trapped on a planet with just Rom. That would be the most neurotic, horrible experience ever.
Yeah.
Riker could be cool, but he'd just be yelling at me the entire time. Worf would be whining the entire time while also yelling at me. So I think for me, like, my best choice that I picked was Kira, because I feel like Kira has the best survival skills, and more so the best survival skills ratio to how much I want to hang out with the person, because you're going to be stuck with this person until who knows how long. So kind of important that you can bond and not kill each other. So I feel like, Kira knows how to survive. She can regale me with tales of the Bajoran resistance. We'll have a good time. She'll be grumpy at first because she's from DS9, but eventually she'll warm up and we'll make it through.
Yes,
I
that's
love
an
this.
epic answer. Yeah.
Yeah, great choice. I want to say a couple people in the comments have put in their answers. We have Colin D saying like Q Colbert. He's safe, like someone who's the best to talk to. I think someone from Strange New Pod, probably Julian, said, I want to be stranded with Will Riker on Starbase 80, which is probably the shittiest dive bar, which would be wonderful.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
And awesome. I'm going to say I have to be stranded with Janeway. I love Janeway so much. I mean, I really love Picard, but I'm going to be stranded with Janeway. And I think we would do great if we were like shoved back in time somehow, whether it's jumping through the Guardian of Forever or going back to LA to like roller skate together. I think we would be able to figure out how to get back to the future while not affecting the present too much. And she's also terrible with the temporal prime directive, so I would try to help her with that too.
Right.
I was just about to ask, do you think she would follow the temporal directive rules? But I'm getting a no from you.
I mean, I don't. It depends on the situation, I guess.
Sure.
And does she have coffee rations with her or not? That's the important question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there coffee where you're stranded? Because yeah.
I just feel like she's so like intelligent with her engineering skills that we can get out of any situation. So got to go with Janeway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. All great answers.
Great pick.
All right. And so now let's move more to Stranded. So I kind of have a little caveat when Rhianna and I were coming up with this watch list to talk about these episodes. There's a lot of moments where Picard is actually kidnapped and then stranded as a result of the kidnapping. And so, or he's like hanging out somewhere and then he gets kidnapped. Like poor Picard, a lot goes down. So I just wanted to say that a lot of these episodes are going to be divided into kidnapping versus stranded episodes. That's just what happens with these Starfleet captains sometimes.
Yeah,
truly. Yeah.
It's interesting too that like the amount of times that he is kidnapped or taken off the ship, they seem to increase as the show goes on. Obviously in the first season or two, they were thinking, well, this guy's not going to go on the away missions. That's Riker's job. But I noticed like with your picks and just kind of going over the list of episodes, it's like, season 5, 6, 7. Now he's really getting kidnapped a lot in the later episodes.
Yeah, and I wonder if they use that as a writing device to add danger, or if Riker's just getting more and more like, I can't.
You go ahead.
I think it's like
Star Trek writing is like pulling somebody out of their comfort zone. and force them to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So especially when it's a team-based show and an ensemble-based show, the minute you pluck somebody away from their entire crew and toss them somewhere that's completely strange, then they're going to be forced to do things that are out of character, a little bit different, and try and find their way, and hopefully in turn show the audience a little bit more about who they are.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, it really does give us an opportunity too to look at all of these different characters that maybe don't interact on a day-to-day basis. And this is always a fun thing about Star Trek, and that we get these in the Stranded episode is going to be really cool.
Yes. And then wrapping up, people have also been pouring in their opinions who they want to be stranded with. Ricard Picardo says Giant Spock, which is a wonderful choice.
Giant Spock is a really smart choice.
Yeah.
Just hold this little finger and you'll be fine.
Exactly. MC is going to ride on Giant Spock's shoulder like a parrot. So we have a whole plan. Everything's going to go well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do it. Let's jump into it. So we will start with the kidnapping section because there's a lot of kidnapped episodes. And we're going to be going into the menagerie. So this is the Star Trek menagerie section where the aliens are studying human behavior, and it's considered a crime sometimes. So the first episode we'll be talking about is Allegiance from season 3 and episode 18.
Yeah. So Ashlyn, before we start though, I think that it's always customary, to have a toast before we embark onto this journey. So anyone have their beverages, non-alcoholic, alcoholic, whatever you're feeling. Let's raise a toast to this podcast and to us, to Stranded Picard.
Launch it.
To Strange New Blood. And you know what, Rhianna, when I was actually at the academy, we used to follow up a toast with a song.
Oh my God.
Let me think. I think I have one. Come cheer up, my lads, 'tis to glory we steer, to add something new to this wonderful year. To honor we call you as free men, not slaves, for who are so free as the suns and the waves. Heart of oak are our ships, jolly tars are our men. We always are ready, steady boys, steady. We'll fight and we'll conquer again and again.
Woo! Thank you. Strange
Encore.
acting Picard.
I felt like Geordi and Worf in that, where in the episode they're just like, I don't know the words. The captain's singing.
Yeah,
I just felt like we had to really get in the spirit, honor Picard, whether he's himself or not.
Yeah,
right.
And thank you to Donnie Pearson, who says, the official march of the British Royal and Royal Canadian Navies. So
Yes.
awesome.
Which for some reason Starfleet adopted, because why not?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Normal stuff. Okay.
So
So let's get kidnapped together.
He was kidnapped by a rectangle in this episode. I think it's one of the most creative ways for Picard to leave the ship. Rhianna, will you give a just brief summary about this one?
Sure. Yeah. So like you said, he's kidnapped by a block of cloud that makes him sparkle away to this holding cell where he's being held with other just seemingly random people plucked from different parts of the quadrant or whatever. And he has to figure out how to get out of this place and sort of what is actually going on here, because it seems at first like they're being held, but they're not being told anything, or they haven't seen their captors at all. And usually, if you're being held, you need some questions answered, or there's going to be some kind of interrogation. And they find that there's only one type of ration, and it's one that Mr. Toss cannot eat. And so then conflict ensues, and Picard has to figure out the motive behind why they have been kidnapped in the first place. And turns out it's actually nothing as nefarious as we all think, even though they were all kidnapped. It's actually just an entity trying to study them. This is why it's in our TNG's menagerie section. So there's a brief summary, but let's dive into it. First, I do want to ask the question, why the sparkly block of cloud? What was the animation? What was going on in their heads here?
I don't know. It's kind of monolithy almost. It's almost like 2001 Monolith. And I remember, I loved this one as a kid when I saw it for the first time, because it was just so weird. Like he's just reading a book. It's something you'd expect him to do. And then suddenly he drifts off, and this thing is so strange. And, sure, Star Trek is aliens and it's in space, but usually it's stuff that we understand. And this just seems so weird. But I don't know. It's not like they have like a monolith-based culture, or their other technology is rectangular or is polyhedron. So I don't really know. They could afford that effect in the computer. Maybe they had that was in their assets.
It's a lot easier just to do 4 points of math.
Sure, yeah, just
than it is to do anything else more fancy.
Doesn't cost much.
Yep, so true.
I think they were getting towards the end of season 3 and said, "Oh, we have a little bit more budget than we thought we did."
Right. We can afford an effect. Yeah.
Yes. Something I was really impressed with Picard is he gets kidnapped, he wakes up, and at that point there's 2 other people there with him, and he gets right down to business trying to figure out what's going on. He's asking questions like, do you have any enemies? Where were you? Like, he's really trying to break down a timeline of each and every person. And so I'm wondering what you thought about like how he took charge. We will see that he gets challenged several times by people saying, I don't know if you should be doing this right now. You're not the cat, or you're not like in control of us. So what were your thoughts about how Picard handled this situation?
He remains calm, which is important, and he's kind of an old hand, I think. Not as much as an old hand at being kidnapped as he will be by the end of season 7, but and something that I thought was really he was the man for this moment is that he knew all their histories. He was familiar as the jet-setting, star-faring captain of the flagship. Like, he knew the Miserians, and he knew I can't remember the stabby underbites race, but like he knew all these creatures. And so he was like, okay, so maybe it's this guy and that guy and that guy and that guy. And he was the guy who could sort of work through everything. It turned out to not matter because I guess they're just picked randomly, but he definitely immediately started to try to take charge, but not like order everybody around, just sort of like get them all working together, which is a real Picard thing ultimately.
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of the episodes we're going to talk about today, I'm going to end up kind of going back to when I first saw these as a kid and some of my initial thoughts on those. Because I remember the first time I watched this as a kid, I was like, whoa, where's this going? This is pretty interesting. And now as an adult with more knowledge of TV and that kind of stuff, I can't help but kind of think of this episode of The Twilight Zone, which was called 5 Characters in Search of an Exit. And this one, now that I look back at it, I'm like, wow, this feels a lot like that episode. And that one, again, has like similar kind of really awesome twist ending. I won't give it away, but essentially it's just like 5 completely weird people trapped somewhere. They don't know why they're there, and they just want to get out of there. And it's a really cool episode. And this very much kind of felt like that, but with that nice, awesome Star Trek twist. And yeah, Picard just wastes no time. Like you said, it's just, he wants to go home. He doesn't want to eat those weird, terrible lucite discs. He wants to go back and get some Earl Grey. Right. No time to be wasted here.
Yeah, Matthew, I love that you talked about the Twilight Zone because they really do stranded episodes the best. And so it's just Star Trek always doing odes to them. And I really liked that we do have it in one solid location the whole time. You know, we don't have a lot of moving around. We don't see this whole facility or the complex. Even when they like jerry rig the door open, there's just another solid block of metal behind that, you know, and so that sort of increases the feelings of like being captured and being like trapped in this place. And so it's really interesting to see how people react to being trapped. And that's of course what the species is trying to do here. At the end, they admit to saying like, oh yeah, we just wanted to see how you all would behave in captivity, essentially. And that's what's bringing me back to the menagerie so much, you know, and humanity's fierce hatred and for captivity and everything. And so Picard is really showing that here. He's like, I would, you know, kind of similar to what Pike said, like we'd rather die than be captive here. And I really love this episode. It actually took me by surprise because I was so like secondhand embarrassment of like the B plot of this, where he is the, you know, like fake Picard. I was so embarrassed by all that I like didn't even think about the actual Picard moments, but watching it for this was so enlightening. I'm like, what a cool way to put them all in a room and then keep them there and see how they react.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Rhianna. I thought it was great to see how Picard was, like, you could see his mind working through, like, what to do step by step. Like, he's at the door trying to tap out, like, hey, we're intelligent, you know, like, this is not, you're not just capturing, like, a plant. Like, we are alive. Trying to think about, like, he's trying to think all the different possible things that could be happening to them, because this is Star Trek and Picard knows anything goes in Star Trek. So I loved him trying to figure that out. And then I thought the reveal at the end that specifically they were chosen because they all react differently to authority was really interesting too. And I think also having that dynamic of the ensign who was, you know, kind of catering to Picard the whole time. Of course, it was all a test. It wasn't even a true ensign, but what did you think about the ending of this episode? I thought it had some season 1 vibes, like just a kind of a weird, we don't have time for this ending. Let's trap you.
Turn it around. Yeah.
Yeah. See how you feel.
End it fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little brutal, surprisingly brutal, I think. But yeah, like I said, very much because Picard doesn't have time for this anymore. You know, like I said, he wanted to get home, so he's finally back on the ship. He's like, let's just get out of here. F these aliens. I'm done with this stuff here. So yeah, and that's like it's kind of fun too. It's like they have this containment field on the ship. I'm like, how come they haven't used that more often? That's a really cool thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Seriously. Well, and yeah, Picard, surprisingly brutal. He did not take this as a first contact opportunity, which I really was expecting him to say, okay, now let's talk about the Federation. But no, he says, get out of here.
This felt like a Janeway move to me, actually.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
A bit vengeful. Yeah. And I feel like too, he was just not in the right headspace to be negotiating like peace or contact anything. Like he needed a moment to breathe and he didn't have one. And so he reacted just of like, I hate you guys. This is what you did to me. I'm going to give you a little taste of your own medicine, which is so unlike Picard. It was really interesting. But we all have our breaking point, and he for sure hit it in this episode.
Well, and they were like there for a while, like not sleeping, just arguing. So there's a lot of tension that he was bringing to that conversation.
Yeah.
I didn't see a bathroom in that cell.
True.
I was wondering that too.
How does that work?
Do they just, they're just a sad
This alien species, they must not have like a DMV or like gridlock traffic, because like they put these people in a hole and they're like, what's it like to like be stuck somewhere and you can't get away?
Exactly right.
Yeah. They've never been trapped somewhere.
A cage of our own making society.
Right.
Yeah.
They're jerks, but they're not civil servants.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Oh man, yeah, it's a very interesting, but I'm glad that Picard says at the end, like, imprisonment is an injury regardless of how you justify it, and sort of helping them to recognize the morality of this situation and the lack of it, and how it is true that we put a lot of our own human moralities onto things, but there are things that are just like hard line. You don't just kidnap people for your own benefit. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think let's move on to Liaisons, which is season 7, episode 2. Rhianna, will you give a brief description of this one as well?
Man, I'll definitely take care of yourselves. We're going to be talking about some kind of serious content here, but Picard essentially gets in a shuttle accident where they are stranded, him and this ambassador that they're supposed to go to this planet together, and they get stranded by this energy field. And so on this planet, it's full of storms, electric storms and stuff. And he meets this woman who has been stranded there for 7 years, and he helps her. He's injured, or so he thinks, and it turns out that she is not as she seems. She falls in love with him supposedly, and Picard has to deal with sort of the implications of that. And turns out in the end of the episode that it's not actually this woman, but it is the ambassador doing the same story that happened to this woman who was there for 7 years and fell in love with someone else to study love. Apparently, that was the determiner. So this is going to have some really intense topics, because this episode just goes dark fast. I was really surprised by it, honestly.
And it's balanced by the goofiest B plot in the world, where Worf is acting way out of character and just getting pissed off by this other guy until he finally hits his breaking point. And then the other guy was like, oh boy, I love chocolate. Oh, I love pizza. And the guy's just eating all the stuff. So you have all that. And then you got this very dark story about this woman being stranded, looking for love on this. I think I read somewhere that this was actually Jerry Taylor, or one of the writers of the episode, had based it on Misery. And the Stephen King story about somebody being trapped and being by themselves and just wanting so much to make a connection with somebody and to be loved. And I think you can see that in the episode.
Totally. Yeah.
Absolutely, Aaron. Yeah, I was going to even say the same thing, because I don't remember what I saw first, if I had seen Misery first as a kid. I saw all sorts of horrible things as a kid, way too young. But yeah, no, it's totally Star Trek does Misery, and it's amazing, and they did it so well. Especially because it's syndicated TV, you can't have anybody breaking his foot. But still, it's some pretty rough stuff, though. I mean, it's again, going back to my initial memory of it as a kid. Much like Allegiance, I was like, where's this going to go? Because it was pretty scary to see Picard trapped like this. This is legit trauma here, and I'm surprised he wasn't more angry by the end of it, like he was in Allegiance.
Yeah. That's something I do want to discuss, because this has very serious implications. Like, he was assaulted by this supposed woman, by this ambassador posing as the woman. Anna was her name, and it's really just like he sort of just gives him a like slap on the wrist type thing. Not even, he's just like, that's not ethically cool at the end, and then he brushes it aside. And so I think that is something that like is so dangerous to brush aside, and it's something that needs to be discussed more. But also, it's the 80s, and they were like, anyway, next episode, like this is sort of also how TNG and Star Trek does it, is they talk about really serious topics, and then they have to be done, so they can't really like bring on more implications.
Okay, I'm actually going to disagree with you a little bit, Rhianna. We're talking about the ending, so I'm just going to dive in. But like, yeah, what they've done is so culturally like I don't know if they did any research, if they were just like, hey, let's just jump in and have fun with the humans. But I think actually Picard is trying to save face, because this is a relationship that he's not trying to burn the bridge for. So if he did not, like, if this was just someone they had randomly encountered who had staged all of this and kidnapped him and like been putting his crew through all of this, I think he would have had a much different reaction. But he's expected to have a good relationship with this ambassador. And he says, as like politely as possible, like, in my culture, you would have committed a crime. The guy doesn't even know what a crime is. And so I think he's trying to be really delicate with the situation and say, we can go deeper into this later, but that was not okay. And like, I am offended, but let's just move past it. So I think he's trying to like, I don't know. I think he's trying to walk the line, even though it's a kind of a dark line to walk.
Yeah. Great point.
I think the real first contact question should be, did they put us through some kind of crazy test when we first met? Like, are they trying to fool us with something? Do we really want to be like associated with these people? That happens a couple times. This is one of, I think, 3 episodes tonight where Picard has a device affixed to him either to cause him pain or to do something. And I think it's like one of like 2 or 3 shuttle or ship crashes as well. So it's like you see these tropes that repeat in Star Trek a lot.
Yes, I was going to say this is a great one, because he's in a shuttle and the shuttle crashes, but actually he's like, the whole thing is a part of the kidnapping. So this is a bingo card for those let me see. I was also going to say that Picard has a when he's talking to the ambassador at the end of the episode, the way he words his kind of final message to him, like, when we meet some cultures, we like to go in with a lighter touch, like something in the middle that's like getting to know you and like doing some research ahead of time. And so it is fascinating to meet a culture that completely immerses themselves. And this is what we've been seeing, of course, on the B plot and then the like sketchy A plot with this lady. So just another way I think that his ability to finesse the situation and say like something in a better way comes through. I mean, this is season 7 Picard. He's dealt with a lot of diplomatic situations at this point. So just want to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I feel like too, it's really interesting to see Picard's sort of just like real logic and like higher brain function coming in here. Of course, he's always very smart, but he really activates that like sort of investigative Dixon Hill mode when he's like stranded in these situations, because in our first episode we discussed Allegiance, like he knows pretty much right away that the Bolian ensign is not who she seems to be when she talks about a mission that is classified, because he throws that out there like, let me see if she knows this one, because it's kind of weird that she would know these other missions. And so that's his first way of doing it. And I love that in this episode as well, he is just fantastic at realizing like pretty soon into the episode, okay, something's going on here, because Anna was like locking the door from the inside, and he's like, that's weird, like there doesn't seem to be a lot of animals on this planet, and realizing that she broke the communicator and all of this kind of stuff, the transmitter. It really is starting to show, oh my god, she has more nefarious intentions than he first suspected. And so I do want to applaud Picard just for staying cool for this whole situation, because that's just an impossible type of stranded to be in, and I'm just like very impressed by him, because like we said, he goes through a lot of trauma and a lot of just like crazy moments that we never talk about again, and this is definitely one of them.
It's a crazy situation, but I guess in their universe, sometimes this is the work of diplomacy. I don't know what class this is at Starfleet Academy, but if you find yourself in a situation where somebody's kidnapped you, but they're pretending to be somebody else, let it play out for a little bit.
Exactly.
Just be understanding. Yeah,
That's true. That's actually, I think, something they do tell a lot of folks who are in like security or that kind of stuff is like, whatever the crazy person says, agree with them.
sure.
Because otherwise you'll just be escalating the situation if you disagree with them. So you actually do want to disagree with them, and then eventually get to a way to mentally disarm them with your own questions that'll maybe start to like get them back into reality. But I think this episode is really great because it also shows us one of the most important character traits of who Picard is, and that's that he does not see things in black and white at all. And we see that, we're going to see it throughout I think pretty much every single episode we're going to talk about tonight, is he doesn't see anything in black and white. He is always about the gray. So whereas these aliens are very much like only thinking about one thing, Picard's like, well, there's a lot of other complicated issues here. And that's how he's able to kind of like maintain his diplomatic abilities throughout these very stressful and oftentimes traumatic situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, MC's throwing out in the comments, Picard's class about diplomacy and kidnapping comes right after Holodeck Malfunctions 101. And Tuvok probably taught, Julian saying there's probably a survival security 101 class taught by Tuvok at the Academy. So all of this is covered.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Yeah. Anything else we want to say about this category of the menagerie before we go on?
I'll say lastly, we do get a scene where they crash in the shuttle, and Picard. I just recently took a CPR in first aid class, so I was noticing he does everything right, and Star Trek does a really good job of accurately portraying how to like make sure someone's in a like calm, stable position. He gets he takes his jacket off to support his neck, puts some like face up so he can like breathe okay. So I was just applauding. We're going to talk about this more about
his survival skills,
first aid, during trying to survive. So
like rating his survival skills throughout the episodes here.
I think that's part of being stranded for sure. You have to be ready for the worst. Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go. So now we are leaving the TNG menagerie section, and we are going to enter the what a tangled web and Picard keeps getting caught section. So this is starting off with a very light episode, the Chain of Command Part 2.
Hilarious episode.
Great. Just
amazing plot. So this one, of course, a very famous episode. Picard is captured by the Cardassians, and he is basically tortured by them into getting information on the attack that will occur on Minos Corva. Of course, that's not happening. This is all a design by the Cardassians. They set up this whole thing to capture Picard, and Beverly and Worf got away, so he's the only one in the situation. He is being gaslighted, girl bossed, and gay kept by this Cardassian. So
definitely,
he has a very good time.
Yeah, and this is incident number 2 of a device being blended into him, as we discussed earlier. So keep that in mind. 2 for 3. This is definitely a torture device that has different like settings of pain and everything. So the Cardassians we are seeing, of course, have really thought of everything when it comes to kidnapping and torture. They're just like showing their kids like that kid's been around to torture her and kidnap her whole life. Like Stranded is just really in their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Oof.
Just don't let the Ferengi get a hold of that instrument because they'll sell it and who knows do it. I mean, it might just not be for pain. Let's leave it at that.
Well, there is one in Buran has one in Gambit later, so maybe this is the off-brand Chinese knockoff version of the Cardassian one.
99-cent store version.
He's got more implants in him than it's like he's just got Borg implants, he's got pain implants, he's just full of metal.
That's true. We didn't even
you can't get an MRI. No way.
No.
I'm just thinking like now how Picard is like literally a homunculus, so I'm just thinking Full Metal Alchemist.
Yes,
totally.
Right.
Yeah, he needed that new body because he was getting packed full of
patchwork here.
Clank,
literally.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I really love Picard. I mean, who doesn't? This is a very famous Picard episode. But specifically thinking about it through a stranded point of view, because he's in a crisis situation. So you go into crisis mode. Remember your training, is everything he's going through. He's probably had training about being in torture situations, and he keeps his head throughout the entire episode.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed in the beginning when he's being taken away by the Cardassians, the goal, is it Avec? What's his name?
Yeah, I think it's Golovec.
He says, like, Picard, why are you struggling? You're wasting your energy. And I'm asking the same thing because in a lot of these stranded episodes, like, he's telling people, stay calm, don't freak out, don't panic. But I think and then also he's yelling over and over again, like, I need to see a neutral representative as demanded by the Cardassian Federation treaty. He's just sticking to what he's supposed to say, trying to handle this as professionally as possible, even when he's being treated like absolute trash.
Yeah, it's funny. He's really calm and courteous, and he doesn't do the thing that they tell you to do in like modern militaries that Riker does when he's kidnapped by Buran and his gang. Just say his name, rank, serial number, that kind of thing. Like he's calm, he's courteous to the guy that has him. He knows he's in danger, but he ends up just sort of like talking to this guy, and that pretty much defines, as you said, like his reaction to this. Later, he's being horribly tortured and he's feeling pain and deprivation and hunger, but he's sort of breaking him too, without maybe meaning to. It's just so powerful, like at the end, near the end of the episode, where he's just yelling like, you're 6 years old, you're just that little boy still, as he's feeling that pain. He has an incredible presence of mind to get through a situation like that.
And that's how he was keeping his mind sharp, by basically just creating another image of his torturer so that he can't be affected by the torture.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, really, maybe that's the Starfleet way. I don't really know. But, I think what kind of struck me especially about this episode was, I just want to know what you all are saying so far, is for Picard, it's really very much about keeping his dignity intact throughout the entire process here, because they're literally trying to strip away his humanity. They're saying, you're no longer going to be referred to as Picard. I'm just going to call you human. And they strip him of his clothes. Literally, they're stripping him of his clothes. They're hanging him by his arms. They're trying to completely dehumanize him. And to get kind of pretentious here, it kind of reminds me of a book called A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. And it's about a Russian gulag. And there's like this one character in particular that I'm thinking of. But the whole book, really, it's pretty much about, a bunch of people in Russia working in like a labor camp. And the kind of torture in their life that they go through. And there's this one character that basically, it's this older guy. He's been there probably forever. He's never going to get out of there anytime soon. He's going to probably die there. He has like no teeth in his head left. He's just a little old frail man. But when he goes to eat his meal every day, he still eats it slowly, savoring every bite. Like, he doesn't have any teeth, but he's just gumming the bread that he gets, dipping it in the water, and just like enjoying it and savoring it, because he refuses to let himself be overtaken by his captors. And that kind of reminded me of especially seeing like Picard eat. Like, yeah, Picard wolfed down some of that food because it had been probably quite a lot of time since he had anything to eat, but still, he was managing to have like an actual conversation with his captors, and at that point, also questioning him and helping to humanize himself to his captor, so that this way, they can do whatever they want to him, but it's still going to be a person in front of him. As much as they're trying to strip away that identity, his captors will know, no, I actually am still Jean-Luc Picard, despite what you're doing to me. So there's so much as a dignity and strength, and just unrelated to, just as an episode, like I don't know if this is my number one of all time, definitely top 5 all time. And I watched both of them together side by side, both part 1 and 2. Oh my God. Every time you watch, you just forget how good this one is. And especially just like David Warner and Patrick Stewart side by side. Oh, you can't beat that. You can't beat that at all. It was beautiful. Just, beautiful.
It's funny because it's a 2-parter, but it almost doesn't need to be a 2-parter necessarily. Do you know what I mean? Like, it picks up, and of course, obviously, we're finishing off the Jellicoe and the sort of brinksmanship of the earlier plot, but it could have just started with Picard, hanging from a thing, and we don't know how he got there. Maybe a blue monolith brought him there. We don't know. And they just sort of play out the scenario still. And as far as you said about his dignity, I think that was a really great observation. His taunt, one of his taunts to Golovec, is the idea of having a full belly but an empty spirit, and he really just starts to sort of like break down like Cardassia's idea of themselves and what they became after the war. Something that obviously we'll all become very familiar with, later in DS9. But even now they're kind of planting those seeds. I thought that was really interesting.
Absolutely, and it makes the build up. It makes the build up to when Golovec finally calls him Picard so much sweeter, because that's the moment he finally got in my head. He's like, just shut up, Picard. And he's like,
you call me Picard. Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that Picard is so masterful at is waiting people out, and that patience really serves him so well as a captain, and especially when he's being taken captive and being tortured and everything. I think that Golovec really wanted him to react very much more viscerally than Picard did. And
Yeah.
so that starts to irritate him. And so it's kind of like when you just wait someone out and they fill the silence and fill it, you just kind of just chill and wait for them to be done. And soon enough, they're like spilling their childhood story to you, like Golovic did, you know, because he wanted so desperately for Picard to be more interactive with him and to like really just, you know, either be like spitting at him or just angry or like really sad and depressed or whatever. But Picard, because of that dignity, did not let any of really that show, besides beyond like physical reactions, of course, to things. But I love that. It's the patience too, that he can just wait people out, especially tormentors like Golovic.
That's like the first thing that Cardi David Warner said to Picard was that this is going to be a challenge. And that's what he wanted. He wanted the challenge. He was seeking Picard out specifically to do this to him, because as much as it was meant to be torture for the sake of the Cardassian Empire and, you know, whatever's happening in terms of the whole war, essentially the whole war effort, no, this is actually personal for him. He made it personal. So it was always going to be a one-on-one battle. It had nothing to do with their warring nations, their warring factions. It was always just going to be one versus one.
You know, it's a totally vain exercise. They gave him the truth serum, you know, at the beginning. So he probably told them everything he knew already without knowing it. And it's just completely Golovic, whatever his problem is, wanting to break this guy. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's
good. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say that this is one of several episodes that we're talking about today where Picard kind of strands himself. He kind of like has the ability to get out of a situation, but puts himself back in it, or like chooses not to leave a situation in which he would be trapped somewhere. And I think that I don't know what that means, but I just kind of noticed that like Golovic just says, "Oh, you can go." And I mean, it's a taunt, but he doesn't even take advantage of it. He's just like, "No, I'm staying here. I need to know more. I'm going to see this out." So I don't know what that means. Maybe it's his fault that he's stuck in these situations sometimes.
Yeah, Aaron, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was literally just thinking about how he could have left, but Golovic said, like, we have Beverly Crusher, so we'll just torture her next. And I think that Picard definitely has a bit of a, like, reckless captain streak, even though he's sort of supposed to be this buttoned up, like, oh, I always follow the rules. When it comes to his crew and his people, like, he will always sacrifice himself for anyone else, even though Riker tells him again and again, no, you're the captain, like, you have to stay on the bridge and like you have to stay alive for everyone. But when push comes to shove, he's always going to be putting himself in the line of fire. And I think that means getting captured a lot and taking the brunt of that. You know, we'll see later, like you're saying, there's a lot of instances where he will put himself in the situation. I think it's truly just him ensuring that like all of that horribleness goes on to him and not any of his crew.
Yeah, he's got an artificial heart for a reason. He's ultimately he's a man of action. He's a guy who jumps into the fray when he has to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So true.
I also think that he I forgot what I was going to say. Shoot, Matthew, if you had something to say, go for it. It flew away.
I'll buy you some time. I'll just ask, how many Cardassians does it take to screw in 4 light bulbs?
5.
Don't you start.
5 lights. I was going to say, thank you, Matthew, that jogged my memory.
That's what I'm here for.
I was going to say that I think something in the back of his head too, while he's able to keep himself like very present, is the fact that this could be a very public situation that's happening because like he's being kidnapped by a major empire. Like the Cardassians are not some like random people we don't know anything about. Like this is a really big deal what's happening. It's on the very high levels of Starfleet. And so I think partially why he's not trying harder to escape is that he knows I will be rescued and I will get out of the situation. I'm not going to be killed. You know, that the Cardassians don't want to actually start a war that blatantly. Mm-hmm. So I think he's kind of saying, okay, let's go for it. And I'll just try to survive and have faith that Starfleet's going to come get me at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a really good point, and something we're going to see really similarly in Gambit. Like that's crazy. He's just always, which I love the writers when they are like, okay, this consistently happens, so we're just going to keep it going, you know, because really we do see these threads of all of this in these stranded episodes of Picard's behavior when it comes to him being, you know, chipped and kidnapped and all of this crazy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to do a quick comment update. We have a fight going on about Jellicoe, so please contribute to that if you have anything to say. Let's see. Julian asked if I'm drinking German beer. Very important to the pod. I am. This is
Nice.
a Hofbrau original. I was trying to go for the ale theme for Picard, giving a toast.
Nice. Yeah.
I went a little too German, but that's okay.
It sounds like a Klingon word, really. Hofbrau.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, actually.
yeah, yeah. Exactly.
I wanted to say really quick that like I'm not like a Jellicoe stan like a lot of people are, and I don't really understand. I guess I understand, but I don't necessarily agree with everybody. I think Ronnie Cox's portrayal of Jellicoe is incredible, and he is, he's obviously a great actor and a great villain. But I think that he's there in the episode, to be a foil and to show the contrast between Picard's leadership and Jellicoe's leadership, and even just like Riker's kind of watchful eye and the way that he would have run things as well. And ultimately he does, solve the situation with Riker's help. Without Riker being such a good shuttle pilot, there is no solution, and does get Picard back. But that thing at the end where he asks him, or near the end where he asks him to do the thing, and he's just he's so shattered to have to ask Riker to do this, and Riker says, you're welcome, and Riker's twisting the knife a little bit.
I love that.
But only somebody as petty and arrogant as Jellicoe could be chastened by somebody saying you're welcome to him. Like Jellicoe needs to get over himself, I think.
Yeah, I love when Riker just says, you could have just asked. Like, I would have done it anyway. You didn't have to order me. Like, legend. I love Riker. I love that battle of wills between them, and getting to see, you're exactly right. It's just seeing the opposites between Jellicoe and Picard, and how Picard just harvests such a wonderful environment for his crew, even if he is a little more strict and maybe they don't have as much of a found family trope as TOS did, it's not as campy with their relationships.
Jellicoe's not interested in that.
Yeah, exactly. He's not at all interested in any kind of camaraderie.
Put Jellicoe in the leotard, have him do it. I'd love to see the episode where Jellicoe is being tortured by Gullivac and see the battle of wills
just
there.
hanging.
Yeah.
It was a different episode. Stranded Jellicoe. Maybe that's our series next year. We'll do Stranded Jellicoe.
Stranded Jellicoe.
Pod's Jellicoe week.
Oh god. That's the most cursed thing.
Nice.
Best way to get no followers.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I think let's go on to Gambit. There are a lot of similar themes running through these two episodes. This one, okay, so you have to tell me. Maybe I missed something in the first couple minutes, but it starts off where Riker and I think it's Crusher and the crew is basically in this seedy Star Wars bar, trying to figure out if they've seen Picard. They have each of them their all various stories, and then we find out that Picard has been killed before the intro. Ultimately, he's not. We end up seeing him 20 minutes later in part 1, and he is he's on this ship. He's analyzing Romulan supposedly artifacts, looking for a certain signal coming from them for this captain. And he, again, here we go. This is the third episode where he has a little thing in his neck, and so he's controlled. He could be really injured or killed if he acts up around this captain. But okay, my question is was Picard on holiday? Why? How did he get into this situation in the first place? Because I feel like it's really brushed over. It's shocking when we see him on this ship because Riker has now been captured also. So we have a double captured. But I'm just wondering, what's going on? Was Picard on shore leave and then he got captured and then he's just on the ship? He didn't try to escape or signal to anyone, or was he already on a mission sanctioned by the Enterprise? I don't know what's happening in this one.
I think Starfleet owed him one after Chain of Command.
He was just taking a break. He was on his way to a conference.
That's okay. Classic.
When all the bad things happen.
Okay. Yeah. So
I don't know.
Last year or before.
I was off the Comic-Con.
I don't know if it's dangerous being a red shirt or going to a conference. It's really, really, really bad. Yeah. So, hi Giraffe. I see that Giraffe just came into the chat. She's not stranded. So.
And Donnie's talking about the Star Wars reference in The Final Frontier, of course.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I love a good old cantina scene. And this one is really interesting because it does have a different feel from the rest of our stranded episodes. It does feel more we've got sort of a rogue Picard situation. We don't know where he is for half the episode. And we apologize because this was not in our Death Fake Out series, even though he's definitely like presumed dead for quite a bit of the first half, but it just missed us. And so it was really fun to see this episode again, because I think I'd seen it when I was like in middle school, maybe the last time. So very important episode for Picard, especially because he kind of just gets into his mode again and just starts being badass. You know, he starts masterminding the hell out of the situation and figuring out all of the different pieces and learning along the way that like this is a very tangled web that they're weaving here. And I am just so impressed with this episode. I did not remember it.
It's an interesting dynamic as well. Like having Riker also be kidnapped seems like a hat on a hat, but having the dynamic of, you could have just had Picard playing the role of Galen and trying to fool these guys, but then you bring Riker in as well. And so they're sort of playing a game with each other while, you know, trying to play off the guys that are there. And it gets really, you can see why they need 2 episodes to like figure everything out, because it gets really tangled. Like he's going to pretend to do this and then he's going to do this, but he'll be mad. Then we'll let him go back to his ship, which has got to be the dumbest mercenary thing ever. Let's let Riker go back to the Enterprise. But then like somehow like it'll seem like he's killed and then they'll believe that. And then he can go back to the Enterprise. And so eventually it all works itself out. But it's I think it's a lot more interesting than just having Picard be captured and have to try to they already kind of did this with like was it the Troy episode where she
Romulan,
goes undercover as a Romulan. It's kind of like that, but they add another little bit more spice, some Riker spice.
Yes,
it's very much like very much double jeopardy in this case. It's like basically it's like a spy episode, really. It's like all sorts of crazy stuff, like you mentioned. You know, the web getting more and more tangled as we go along this one. That's what makes it such a good episode. Also, a good pair of episodes. You know, like Aaron said previously when we were talking about Chain of Command, like it's almost like 2 different episodes. But this one here, like you very much have to have them side by side because it is like its own movie. Really, this basically could have been a Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
And plus, you got Richard Lynch as like the main bad guy, who is like the king of schlocky villains. So I mean, there you go.
Yeah,
perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
I was really thinking this had movie stakes, and especially when oh, my poor thoughts just flying away. Oh, I want to talk about Riker because we haven't brought him up yet that much in this episode, but poor Riker. When Picard gets stranded or goes missing or whatever's happening to him, Riker, obviously he's showing his best self by taking command of the Enterprise, being a great first officer, but he's freaking out. And I think in this episode, he's freaking out the most because he is like hell-bent on revenge to figure out what happened to Picard. And I love it, but I think it's really out of place. And it shows like how emotional Riker is about Picard. And I just thought the whole situation was fairly out of character for Riker and also for Starfleet, because when he goes to ask permission to Starfleet, like, hey, can I go investigate the death of Picard myself? The guy's like, sure, we'll put you on detached leave, which I've never heard of. And he says, your mission is at your discretion. Like, what freedom do they have? You know?
Yeah. And he immediately gets captured then after that too.
Yeah, right away.
I don't think it was super out of character though necessarily, because like looking at some of these episodes we talked about today, for example, like in Allegiance, like it's Riker's emotions that starts to lead him down the path of thinking this isn't the right guy and confronting him about it. We see it again in Chain of Command with him and Jellicoe. Like Riker is someone that's very much not afraid to show his emotions, which is why he's a great counterpart to Picard, because Picard knows how to center himself for the most part, but Riker will go for the emotion first. He'll go for the gut instinct first. And in this case, he is hit just like super hard by the loss of his mentor figure. And it's not just that he's like missing, because even in other episodes we're going to talk about as we go on in this episode here today, you know, there's times where he's missing, but they know where he is. This time around, he thinks his mentor is legitimately killed. So like he's just now grieving essentially, and that he doesn't really know what to do with himself because his emotions are always so big to begin with. Now having to deal with that makes it just even bigger.
Yeah.
Yes.
That spreads up the chain of command as well, because now, you know, Data puts the red shirt on and then Worf is second in command and he's lost his captain and his big buddy as well. So, you know, it's no surprise that he's like, oh, I don't think that we should do that. Data has to be like, don't disagree with me when we're on the bridge. Okay. Yeah. I like that little talk that he has to give him. Yeah. Emotions are running high.
They really are. And I think this is so important because it really does change the nature of how everyone leads and commands and how they follow, because Riker clearly there are some things that he's just not quite ready for that leadership role because he's relying so much on Picard, and because I think he kind of uses him as a crutch sometimes. And so when that crutch is gone and he's put in command, when Picard is like presumed dead or being tortured or whatever the situation, like he falls apart. And so I think this is really indicative of his character and of his growth, you know, that he kind of needed to grow past Picard in order to get his command with the Titan and everything. Like, I love Riker, but I do think that he is held back a little bit by his love for Picard. And who wouldn't be, like, to be that devoted to Picard, and to understand his sort of nuances and his kind of grumpiness sometimes, or just like abruptness, you know, to really understand him as a character and as a person. Like, Riker has to be so devoted, and he really is. And so I think it's very sweet almost in a way to see Riker just losing his absolute shit like every time Picard goes missing, because it's really showing like this is his one sort of weak spot, you know, and it's definitely a glaring one. And I think it's not super out of character for Riker. I think he's just kind of falls apart when his like you said, his mentor. So it's really cool to see, though, in this episode how when they're together again, they are just unstoppable team. Like, I do not at any point feel worried about them not getting out of the situation. Like, they are just such a good duo. And like we've seen in other episodes, can literally communicate without talking to each other. So that is just brilliant to see.
There's so good at improv.
Yeah, literally.
Right. Yeah.
All of Picard's time acting in Beverly's play is really paying off right now.
And Riker too. He's had a lot of acting.
Yeah, Riker almost had his Rios moment where he loses his captain. It could have just destroyed him forever. So thank goodness he survived.
Literally.
Yeah. So I think let's turn again back to Picard, because I think of him as playing like 3-dimensional chess in this episode. He is thinking about every single person on the ship, this supposed Romulan, the captain, all the people who are basically like indentured servants to the captain. And then when Riker comes on board, he's like, this is awesome. I know what to do now. I have a plan to try to get out of the situation. So what are your thoughts about how Picard basically like navigates all of these people, and how does it play out for him?
That was so cool seeing him manipulate everybody without them even realizing they were being manipulated. Because it's not just that Picard is playing the character; he's yes-anding everything, and he's basically giving Riker his own character to play as well. Riker's all for it. Like the minute Riker gets beamed on, Picard creates the dilemma that only Riker can conveniently solve. I mean, it's just he's setting up all the pieces on the table. He knows where he wants to get to. Really, the only thing he has to worry about is I forgot her name, but the Vulcan played, or the Romulan rather, played by Robin Curtis. Like that's really the only variant that he doesn't really know what to do with and he can't manipulate. But everything else, I mean, they are just his pawns. He's doing whatever he wants. And once he does actually get control back of the ship, like he just turns right back into Picard. He's no longer Galen. Like now he is just himself. The game is over. The cards are on the table. They still don't know he is someone else, but now he can basically just be himself and run the game.
Yeah, he's an impressive actor, as we know, Patrick Stewart, but had that difference between his Galen voice and his kind of bearing, and then him, Brown's gone. All right, I'm just Picard now. Was really interesting in the episode. There is a point though when he's talking to Riker and they're deep into this where he's like, I can't remember who I'm supposed to be. Are we doing this? Are we doing that? Like he has to kind of keep it all straight.
That's why method acting is so hard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, truly.
It definitely gets more complex. And the Romulan, who we think is actually a Vulcan named T'Pol, with like Tapaal. So close to T'Pol. I had to do a double take and I turned on subtitles. I was like, what did they say? Is that T'Pol's ancestor? Like, what's going on?
And there was also Commander Chakotay in this one too.
Yes. Yeah. I was literally like, is that Chakotay? What's happening? Yeah. Thought that was funny. I love once Picard gets into her good graces when she tells him, oh, I'm a Vulcan security officer and I'm investigating these logic extremists, which I love to see episodes that like zoom out into the wider world of the Federation and Vulcan, because we love stories here about Vulcan. And so by her confessing her truth, Picard says, okay, well, I'm the captain of the Enterprise. And now he has two people, like two go-betweens on the ship. I'm thinking this captain has absolutely no chance of succeeding at this point. Like it was already a done deal with just him and Riker, but now he has someone else on the inside. And that's ultimately what saves him, is because Riker's finally back on the Enterprise, and Picard sends a message to him that says, make sure you rendezvous with the Vulcans and tell them not to attack their own ship when the raiding ship is going to like the logic extremist part of Vulcan. And that is what signals to the Romulan, or to the, there's so many, again, I'm in a tangled web of what's going on.
We're in our own web.
Yeah. But that's what ultimately clues in the Vulcans and everyone that actually she is one of the extremists herself, and she wants this special artifact to control and manipulate people like with her mind by using this artifact. It's kind of a cheesy ending to the episode.
Yeah.
But I was excited by its wide like depth into the Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
I just think it's so funny that there's something out there called a logic extremist also. Like that alone is just the most Star Trek thing ever.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it's so many series. Like I love that TNG dives into this because we're going to see it in Enterprise and Discovery. And so it's really cool that I didn't know that it had sort of like a base here in TNG and in this episode, and what's going to be the fight for the like Kirshara later on in Enterprise. So I was like, this is so cool. I love getting more Vulcan lore, and the fact that we get to see Picard finessing again, like sort of a great solution to a seemingly impossible problem. Like this literal Vulcan logic extremist has a weapon, a telepathic weapon, and he still defeats her by peace and by like tranquil thoughts and just by like embodying the Federation. Like how cheesy but beautiful, you know, at the same time. It's so Star Trek, and I absolutely love that it goes through Worf, and we're all kind of worried, like, oh my gosh, is Worf gonna get killed? Like he has violent thoughts, but of course, you know, he can have these like moments of peace, and he knows really what it is to like how great peace is and how like important it is for the Federation and everything. And Riker, of course, is just chilling, like it just passes right through him. And so it was really like what a fun ending to such a long time for Picard to be stranded. I think this is one of our longest strandings for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even as he's like playing this character of Galen, he still is retaining very much a lot of the elements of who Picard actually is as a character. Like, yeah, at times Galen is belligerent and he's, you know, slapping Riker, but for the most part, he's still actually being very diplomatic.
Yeah.
Just a little more assertive, I guess, if anything. More aggressive, I guess, is a better term in this case. But yeah, he still knows how to solve problems by being himself, just putting an accent on it, basically.
Yeah.
Much better accent than he did in Picard season 1.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That was rough. Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, much better. I also want to say Raiding Party of 5, which I think Picard says at one point. That's like my favorite band title ever. Like I call that right now.
That's so good.
It's my new trivia name. Like it's fine.
That's epic. I love it. All right. How are we feeling? Are we ready to go on to our third section of our kidnapping? Our subsection? Sure. Yeah.
Temba, my arms wide open.
Yes, here we go. Thank you. Yeah, well, this is our taken by surprise, angst with a happy ending section. So we are going to be talking first about Darmok and the just wonderfulness of this epic stranding of an episode.
Yeah, this is this section is interesting because it's like species kidnap Picard, and like for a reason. And so with Darmok, it's very much not planned. They have a run into, and I'm so sorry, what's the species name?
The Temerians.
Temerians. Thank you. That's
the children of Kama.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So they run into the Temerians, and they have no way of understanding what they're saying, because even though they're using English words, like the translator is working, it's they're communicating by metaphor.
The best line.
Yeah. So they decide, the Temerians are like, okay, let's do Darmok. Darmok always works. Let's put the two captains down there, and have a beast, and hopefully we will be enemies to lovers by the end of the episode.
Yeah. The beast of Tanagra.
Static animal killers.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely a unique stranding episode, because it definitely is a kidnapping at first, but it's like a well-intentioned kidnapping. You know, I love those. I love the fact that this is really just to try to figure out a language barrier to the extreme. Like, he will die for this. And Dathon does end up dying in this episode for the just bridging of that barrier. And that is the most Starfleet shit I've ever seen. Like, it's beautiful to see that Dathon will do the Beast at Tanagra and the Darmok on the ocean. Like, they will reach that common ground and I think Picard, again, is just showing his badassery here and showing his ability to wait patiently. They wait for so long by the fire, and he's just getting snippets of information and trying to understand, like, what is tempo? Like, are you giving me something? Like, his arms wide, and Picard, because he has such a brilliant mind and such a like artistic mind, that he is able to sort of think about it in maybe less of a logical way and more of a like artistic and like, oh my gosh, he's speaking in metaphor. It kind of reminds me when like, 7 of 9 is able to identify, oh, they're speaking in this binary language, or Data is something like that, because like that's more what their like mind goes to, and Picard is more the artist and the lover and like that kind of, he's got that passion, and so I think that also helps him to understand the language better.
I was thinking about the fact that I don't think, I'm trying to think of any other franchise that could have pulled off something not only like this, but specifically the middle act of the episode is just these guys sitting there by the fire, not talking to each other and basically talking to themselves. And it's down to Patrick Stewart, it's down to Paul Winfield, but would anybody else even attempt to try and do something like this, where Picard is just trying to say, is it this? Is it that? Oh, I don't tell a story. Okay, here we go. Enkidu and Gilgamesh. And just having this just like such a small scale thing. Now later they fight, an electric triceratops because, it's Star Trek. But that's one of the reasons that I love Star Trek so much, is because it can get away with something like this. And this was, was this the first episode or the second episode of the fifth season? Yeah. There's a thing they always talk about in Star Trek, growing the beard, right? When the show starts to mature. But for me, like, I call it sewing the jacket. When Picard gets that dumb velvet jacket thing with the gray shirt, I think that happens here. Like, this is where we start to see like the show really mature in terms of
there it is.
The stories that it can tell that aren't just pew pew space stuff, or a weird alien like this. It's just so creative. This type of episode, I don't know, I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think also it stands out as a Stranded episode because he's not trying really to survive. I think he trusts the process and the situation to say, okay, maybe I can't light a fire, but I'm not going to die here. Hopefully. He's saying he's not going to starve to death. He's not like trying to find a water source, which he probably should have, but
survival skills, not so good in this one.
Yeah. Not quite priority.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what's cool though is really Picard kind of found his equal, and I think I kind of get glossed over a little bit here too, because basically, Dathan kind of does like probably something similar that Picard would try and do, and that's trying to bridge the gap in the most human to human way possible, the most one-on-one way, the most intimate way to get somebody to understand what's happening. Because it's the way they speak is just literally out of this world. But I mean, it's so bizarre compared to anything else they've come across in this universe. So yeah, I mean, Dathan's willing to go the distance. He's willing to put his life on the line, just like Picard has done. So many times throughout the series. I mean, like, I'm just thinking now, since we mentioned earlier, the one where he goes to Mintaka 3 and he basically says, like, I'm not a god, shoot me with an arrow, see what happens. Like, he's willing to put himself out there. Dathan is doing the exact same thing, and it's kind of just really beautiful watching that. And, again, this is like one of my top episodes of all time of TNG. Like this, like Aaron was saying, like, this is kind of like peak sci-fi. Yeah. This is high art sci-fi right here. This is like what we aspire to be, and such a beautiful episode. Everything about it was amazing. Paul Winfield, the late Paul Winfield, that's the guy I wish I could have had on my show. He does an amazing job. Also, like, so many subtle things that he does start his performance as well. That's a whole different podcast. But I love what happens here. And I just love the fact that really Picard met his best friend. And it's unfortunate that he had to meet his demise the way it happened, because it would have been, just the fanfics we could have written about those two.
Seriously, and probably are written.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do it, cowards. Yeah. Children of Thomas series. Let's see it. Come on.
Let's go.
Paramount Plus.
Yeah. Well, and I think this really highlights what you're saying, Matthew. Like the Stranded elements really highlight those really human, and I shouldn't say human, but like those really important emotional moments between two characters. I think
we can all relate to, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's a way for them to take them out of their normal environment and force them to talk, and we're going to see this with Picard and Wesley later on, and Picard and Beverly here very soon. And I think that it's something so unique than maybe him and Dathan just sitting in a conference room. There's no ultimate stakes here. And so that's why, of course, he did the Beast of Tanagra and did Darmok and Jalad. So I think that was just heightening those stakes, really bring out the more emotional sides of people. And that's also what makes such a dynamic and electric episode, is to see them like truly fighting for their lives and willing to die for this cause. Like, wow, what a combo.
Yeah. And they're both, it's so on brand for Star Trek, because they're both the most noble people, from their representative civilizations, but they're also like, instead of like the Cardassians want one thing and the Federation wants something else and they can't agree, they literally can't talk to each other. And so it breaks it down to that very base idea of reacting with anger or an instinct of self-preservation when you're confronted with the other. And the key ultimately is them overcoming those natural, base instincts to make a connection with each other. And it's such a creative way to do that, other than just having, they're arguing this treaty of this, or we've got a dispute over that. It's just it's so creative.
Absolutely.
I don't know about you guys, but like watch this again now too. It kind of reminds me of like, if you guys have ever read A Clockwork Orange, like the actual book for it, and like how it starts off, you don't know what's happening, you don't understand a single word they're saying, but as you're immersed in it, you start understanding. And like, first time you watch Darmok, you have no idea what's happening, and then you watch it again, and like as soon as all the Temerians are on screen on their ship talking, you know what they're saying now. And that's so cool. We've all been immersed in this metaphorical language, and we know what they're saying. And it's like, that's kind of just the beauty of, I guess, the ways that people can communicate. Like even something as nonsensical as this, we now understand as a language. We could probably, if we want to do this rest of the episode that way, we probably could. We're not going to.
Shaka indeed. Yes.
I think it is inspiring just to see like how, like really all it takes to be able to communicate with someone is a willingness to listen to each other. And I think that's one of my favorite takeaways from this episode, is they're both trying so hard to figure out one another. It's just beautiful. And another example of a culture that just goes 100% in.
Full sending it.
Halfway. They said, let's go. Let's do Darmok.
Right.
Yeah.
Their eyes uncovered.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, beautiful.
Well, I think let's go on to Attached. This is season 7, episode 8. Wow, this is a lovely episode. This is like a classic Star Trek where you like stranded with someone you got a crush on.
Right.
What happens? So Picard and Beverly are beamed out of the Enterprise, and no one can find them for whatever reason. Were they beamed into space? No, they're alive and well. But there's a civil war. There's 2 warring factions going on this planet, and they have been captured by the species that is not in communication with the Enterprise. And so Picard and Beverly wake up. Oh, here we go. Device.
I forgot there's a 4th device.
Yep.
So this is actually 4 devices. Out of 8 episodes we're talking about today, there are half of them
are neck or like, side device.
Yeah. So essentially, like as the episode goes on, their brainwaves have been calibrated to these devices, which means that they can read each other's thoughts. And so they are eventually released pretty quickly by the faction that is like talking to the Enterprise. And they go down this mountain path trying to find their way to freedom. On the other plot, Riker's freaking out and
as usual,
trying to get them back and have some diplomatic relationship with this whole planet. But yeah, okay, let's talk about Attached. I think this is a great stranded episode, but again, similar to Darmok, it's not so much about like we have to find food and shelter. This is another thing like, okay, let's trust the process. We've been released from this prison, so I assume we will be found at some point. We have a big starship up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they have an alliance too. Sorry, just quickly with the Kess. So that helps that they know at least one side is hopefully looking for them.
This is another situation where it's like, do we really want to like have these people in the Federation? Like I'm not sure exactly what it's just a side kind of theme or note that they're going with, but showing the increasing paranoia of these 2 cultures, but in a comical way, because every time Riker goes back into that room, there's just more sci-fi crap piling up in there.
Like
for some reason.
What is it, like those things you touch your hand on and like
like it Spencer's goods? Yeah. So yeah, it's at this point, like in season 7, and a lot of season 7 episodes are like this, but it's really just about these characters. We've spent so much time with these characters, and I have to imagine that the writers must have asked themselves, are there any unanswered questions for these characters? Are there any things that we need to like wrap up or explore before we shut the show down? And the connection, in this case literal, between Picard and Crusher, I think is, that's what we're looking at here. And it's interesting for them to learn so much about each other, and become so close, and then immediately go, all right, well, we're gonna get it on now, right? That's what we're gonna do, obviously. And then they both sort of back off from that. What did you guys think was the reasoning there? Not necessarily in the world of the characters, but like in the world of the writers, like, we can't get these two together, it'll spoil something. Or why do you think that they ultimately diverged?
Give us the OTP, you cowards.
Right.
Yeah,
Where's Bev?
Seriously.
I mean,
Seriously.
it's kind of like,
Where's Bev?
this episode is literally like a means to an end, because it basically was to solve that question of what is the deal with Beverly and Picard. And we didn't really get a great resolution. It's kind of BS. I don't know what the point of it was, because like, they set up this entire thing just for that conversation. That's literally the only reason this episode exists, is just for that. And then they give us the most lackluster syndicated TV ending possible. Because God forbid they make a dramatic change in TNG that would affect the rest of the series. No, we can't do that. So that's got to be the only reason why they decided meh. Because, well, if someone tunes in next week and they miss this one, they won't know that they're now a couple. So that's got to be the logical reason that they would have done that.
Yeah, the whole reset. Yeah.
And yet
That's
they have Troy and Worf together for a couple episodes. I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it seems like they were too scared to dive completely in. And so they kind of made the mistake of going half in and then like, oh shit, like backing up the last minute. And so I think that that's where the episode suffers the most, because as MC Froda says here, the comments, like Star Trek episodes when they're fan fiction tropes, like this totally could have been a great, like, they're sharing, literal brain waves, like they're sharing that brain cell. They are like thinking for each other, so connected and attached that the fact that they don't grow beyond something more than friendship here is just like endlessly bizarre to me, because it feels almost like a queer bait, but they're straight. So like, you don't even have to do that. It felt like, like, what is this weird, like straight bait we never get for shows, but it's, I guess, a Janeway and Chakotay thing as well. So I was
gonna mention that too. Yeah, it's like the same thing, but it's like Janeway Chakotay makes more sense and they set it up so much better. And there was never really a romance between them. This was like maybe the chance to toss it at the fans. But in this case, it's like from the first episode, from the pilot of Encounter at Farpoint, we knew there was something between these two characters. They dragged it on for 7 seasons, sprinkled it a little bit here and there everywhere, and then they just give us this as our ending. And Picard season 3, you better fix this.
Yeah.
If this,
in All Good Things, and that's erased, and so it's just like it's maddening. Yeah.
If this episode had happened in season 3 or season 4, I think it would have been a good way to finally explain for the audience, what the connection was between them. And then I can see them being like, not only are they feel closer romantically, but they also feel closer in terms of their friendship. And ultimately they don't want to ruin their friendship, and they have these unresolved feelings. And so we sort of understand more, okay, that's kind of what's going on. And then if we have a different episode in season 7 where they do get together or say, no, we're not going to get together, but to have it happen so late, like, I'm glad that they got around to this eventually, but I just feel like it would have felt better earlier in the run of the series.
Thank you, Aaron. I feel the exact same way. I think this is a perfect springboard for something else to develop. And I would have expected that in the last couple episodes of the whole entire series. Yeah. And I'm just thinking that because this episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes, I think he's playing the long game. I think that something's going to happen in season 3 and finally.
I mean, they did set up this whole Q plot to like get Picard ready for love. Like all of season 2 was meant for Picard to like finally emotionally open up. So hopefully that is for Bev. But also I understand if she didn't want to wait that long, like he has been he was back and forth with her. And I think she was eventually the one to sort of end that. She was the one who pulled away, and Picard did say, like, for so long I had kind of loved you and I felt so guilty because Jack Crusher was in your life and then Jack Crusher was dead, and there's so much baggage wrapped up with the two of them. So I think maybe from a writer's perspective they're also thinking like this would just be too much emotionally, at least for Picard, and especially for Picard. I think Beverly, of course, has different feelings about her, and her relationship with Jack and Picard are so different that I don't think she conflates them as much as Picard does with her, because his friendship with Jack was like super important, and he was also kind of the cause of his death, or at least he thinks that way. So it's so tangled and complicated that I think maybe also the writers were like, this is too emotional, like we can't touch this, but either way, give us a straight answer, not this like, we'll kiss, no we won't, bye, let's be friends, I'll see you at breakfast.
It wasn't even a real answer, honestly. I mean, they gave us they gave us less I think by the end of the episode than they did when they started this episode out.
Yeah.
I think also it just shows that Picard is Picard is ready. I do think if she had said yes, they would have gotten together in this episode. But I think his hesitation is also because he doesn't want the same thing to happen to Beverly that happened to Jack. Like, what if he has to send her as a CMO into a dangerous situation and she ends up getting killed? Then he's killed like two people he loves, like in the same way. That's the sad part about being captains. You have to do stuff like that. I just want to say in the comments, we got a great Bev Love Fest going on. Julian saying this festival may go down as giving equal time to Bev as Jean-Luc this year. Love that. And then MC says if they got Crusher Picard together here, they could have screwed Bev over in the movies. That's that would be a whole different thing.
Yeah. Very good point.
But then if MC goes on and says if they had gotten Picard and Crusher together in season 7, they wouldn't have been able to screw her over in the movies. Claire's and the writers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
True.
Absolutely.
True.
Yeah.
I just want to add that if I had this mental connection with the person that I was trapped on at the beginning of this podcast that we talked about, I want to change my answer a little bit because I think Kira would walk away unscathed. I would be limping home. So yeah, I don't know about your people you're going to be stranded with, but yeah.
Yeah, same. I think Janeway would be like, okay, let's be friends, and I'm like, are you sure though? like, please, just think about it for a sec. Yeah,
we were stranded on this planet and kissed.
Yeah, exactly. So it turned out they were rescued. Bev so kindly pushed Picard through the like little electric fence, and he was I think she was trying to save him, not knowing the situation, but she was rescued by the Kess, I believe, and then Picard was rescued by the other faction, and everything turned out fine. They have their little closing talk, and it's just leaving me waiting for season 3. So let's just see what happens.
Yeah, then we can have a discussion after, just to
have
cry with happiness or sadness.
Have a stranded reunion. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
man.
Well, now it's time to go to the actual stranded section. We are done with kidnapping now. So this first episode we're talking about is Time's Arrow Part 2, and Picard is not stranded for long, but I thought it was good to talk about because it's a moment where he's like notably left back in time, and his crew is not with him. So Time's Arrow is the one with Mark Twain. Data's head is found like underneath San Francisco. It's 500 years old. Part 1 deals with Guinan, and they go back in time, and it turns out these like snake they're aliens that have like a snake staff or trying to mess around with time. And so the crew ends up going back. And then that's what we see mostly in Part 2. Riker's a policeman. They're rehearsing a play. It's wonderful. Love this episode. But specifically, the antagonist, and I'm so sorry, I don't remember the names of the aliens. I don't know if anyone has those.
They were pretty crappy aliens, to be fair. So
they were
aliens if you
not
want.
memorable.
They're just nameless. The Time Snakes. There you go.
That's a good band name, by the way.
Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Time Snakes, they have appeared in this cave, and they have this like surge of energy, and they open up a portal, and so the whole crew basically runs through to follow them back into the future. Back to the Future, and Guinan has been injured, and Mark Twain just yeets, and he goes into the portal with the rest of the cast, and so Picard and Guinan are trapped together in this cave 500 years in the past, and it's a really nice moment because Picard is doing everything he can to protect Guinan, and I think it's pretty awesome that he didn't go back in time, even without knowing I'll necessarily be rescued or I could be stuck here.
I just want to say, as all of us being Star Trek figure collectors, I feel like this was a missed opportunity to give us a Mark Twain action figure.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
This episode's great. I love it all. But where's my Mark Twain figure?
Yeah, come
So
on.
then-
I literally just ordered a Dathon figure, so like I'm collecting all the stranded people. So like let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this episode really again shows Picard's devotion to his crewmates and the people that he cares about, you know, and
Mhm.
we were just talking about him and Bev having these sort of like romantic moment, but I love Picard also getting these like platonic love moments, you know, with people, and we're going to see this in our next episode, in our final episode we discuss. But in this one, it's so special that he stayed back with Guinan because it really marks a like important period in their relationship for the both of them. You know, of course, Guinan from like Enterprise time is chilling in 10 forward already knows all this, but Picard, for him going back in time and like getting to meet Guinan, who doesn't know him yet. It's such a like Doctor and River song, like they're meeting each other backwards kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Very timey-wimey.
Which is kind of very wibbly wobbly. So it's cool to see that they still get to bond over this, even though Guinan is kind of like, I barely know you, but like you seem cool, and like I can't believe you stayed back in time for me. And that that marks such a solid point in their relationship for both of them, regardless of when they're experiencing it.
Yeah.
I love this kind of Jeremy Bearimy stuff out there for anybody who knows The Good Place. I love when
Yes,
like
best
that, 'cause,
reference.
yeah, I love these kinds of stories in general because it's like getting from point A to point B, but also there's like point C is before point A, and then point D also is in there somewhere. I just love how this episode is structured, and yeah, it's real wonderful just seeing like, I guess we're talking about the origins of the relationship with Guinan and Picard here. I mean, it's so cool to see that happen, and I don't really have too many deep thoughts in this one. Honestly, I just love this one. It's just very wholesome. I mean, everything about it is just so wholesome. Besides, Data being sent back in time also, because Data is stranded first. I mean, that's really where this whole thing begins.
Yeah,
For
true.
Data, we will cover this in his stranded episode. But
Yes.
it's just a lot of fun to see everybody like do these different things. It's just such a wonderfully balanced ensemble episode. And yeah, just I have nothing but good things to say about this one.
It's funny that the TOS crew gets stuck in San Francisco in the 80s, and then Picard and crew go to the 1880s of San Francisco. Something that I like about this episode, and it's one of my favorite ways to tell time travel stories. There's a lot of different ways you can tell them, but I like the predestination one, where anything that you're going to change is going to happen no matter what, and time is like just a continuum. And so it's more about understanding why you made those choices. And they have that, specifically with Data's head, which apparently, you can use a 600-year-old head on Data's body. So if you write that down, he's got a 600-year-old head now. But I like the fact that even at the climax of it, it's brave that Picard did what he did to stay behind to be with Guinan, but you have to wonder if he maybe believed ultimately that he would be saved because there was no Picard skeleton down there with Data's head. It doesn't make what he did less heroic, and then even when he's there, he's like, wait a minute, no, the head's there in the future. I know how to do this. I'm a Starfleet guy. So he puts the message into Data's head. I really like that idea, knowing that Geordi would hook it up in the future and go, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be there. So, I just love like when they tell time travel stories like that, people sending messages to each other. Of course, Doctor Who has done this to death, especially in the recent era of Doctor Who, but
I'm not sick of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great storytelling.
Not sick of it yet.
Yeah. And I think too, Riker sort of playing his role as well, and being again Riker freaking out when Picard is stranded, even though it's for like a couple minutes, he still is very devoted to figuring out where he went, and they literally have to remind him, hey Riker, like you have to focus on these snake aliens first, like before we figure out the Picard issue. And Guinan has a good talk with him, essentially a non-talk. She doesn't barely say anything. She's just like, I'm not telling you shit. Like, we are not talking about this. Absolutely no. It could disrupt the timeline, all this kind of stuff. And it's a good lesson for Riker to like, sometimes you just got to let things happen, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I think Picard was like, I have had too many chips in my body for these episodes, so I'm giving one to Data because
now you get something.
He needs it instead.
Yeah.
Data was on his way to a conference, and then
Yeah, right. And just having Mark Twain at the end kind of internalize that lesson and be like, no, I'm going to put the watch right here. That's people just sort of like trusting in the future, and just accepting their circumstances. I thought that was kind of interesting. Mark Twain totally blows a collaboration with Jack London in this episode. Who knows what those two could have done if they had gotten together?
Literally.
I'm saying, yeah. That Mark Twain was pretty good. I felt a ghost into the room. Was like, oh God, he's here. He's with us.
Another Star Trek note too, by the way, for anybody who likes like this style of storytelling, like this one kind of reminded me of a comic I read a little while ago called Paper Girls. And I think it's supposed to be getting a TV series at some point also. I don't know if that's been canceled or not, but really great comic. It's only like, I think it's less than 36 issues if you want to like read the whole thing. It's just very much kind of like the same thing where it's very Jeremy Bearimy. So if you like this episode and you like comics, give Paper Girls a try. That's my shameless plug, unsolicited plug for a comic that some folks out there might enjoy too.
Love that. Thank you. Yeah. And we have a serious question from Strange New Pod. Who fucked with time most? Was it Kirk, Jean-Luc, or Janeway? I'm putting in Anorax as mine actually. So he actually fucked with it the most.
But did he? That didn't even happen. So
exactly. So he really did.
Well,
or Michael, her mom, we see as well too.
Specifically, what is it like? Skulder and Mully, the time agency guys are like, Captain Kirk, don't even start me off with that. So in the halls of the time agency, they would say that it's Kirk, but I don't know.
I think Kirk gave the least amount of shits about it. He was like, whatever, let's go.
And Janeway, though, for real, she doesn't care at the end.
That's true. I can't remember the name of the episode now, but when the time ship shows up and they're like, oh boy, okay, all right.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know if this ever has been answered canonically, but I kind of wonder about Scotty because I mean, he did give away transparent aluminum. Like, was that guy supposed to be the inventor of it? Like, what happened there?
That's true.
That is a huge question. Yeah.
Well, and like Spock gave in the Helvetverse, he gave Scotty his codes from the future. So, like, what does that do to the future? Also,
his equation for transporting at warp.
Yeah, and we see MC Freitas said Admiral Janeway, she erased 25 years just because things didn't happen exactly how she wanted it. Also, a good point. I believe Harry Kim and Chakotay also did that.
Timeless. Yeah,
but it's Harry Kim's husband.
Yeah.
So great question. Yeah.
I think it's time to go on to the last episode of our TNG watch list. So we're going to talk about Final Mission. This is a great Wesley and Picard episode. Picard, at the beginning of the episode, informs Wesley, hey, you've been accepted into Starfleet and I'm going to take you on one final mission so we can just have some time together. And of course, the shuttle crashes and
shuttle crash.
The classic. Yeah, this is a very classic shuttle crash episode. And they are with a pilot of a freighter ship or a captain of a freighter ship. He's here for some of the episode, sadly dies. But they are
that sadly.
Yeah.
Death by shrink wrap. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
This is a very great one to see. What should you do if you're stranded in a desert? Because Picard quickly is trying to figure out where's the food, where's the water. Oh no, there's no water because this captain didn't keep any provisions in his shuttle.
Right. Yeah.
Only alcohol, which is just worse.
Which is dehydrating. Yeah. So I think let's just go into this episode. How do we feel about Picard taking hold of the situation? Did he make the right choice to head towards the mountains? What are your thoughts?
I mean, definitely did, because that's how they found him ultimately, was his little arrow. I mean, so this was like survival skill 101 for Picard. Like, this was very basic for him. Like, he was not nervous at all. This was just textbook for him. So yeah, I mean, it was smart of him to take control. Wesley was, of course, all on board for it as well. It was just, the captain who was just whiny about it and getting drunk. So yeah, for the most part, this was an easy day for Picard, just made more difficult because that idiot.
Yep.
Yeah, it's always the idiot who makes it harder in these episodes. And I was really glad that Picard did have sort of an ally in Wesley in this episode, because if it were him and the idiot, then that would be just even more annoing. So
we're not going to try and give him a name now. He's just the idiot.
He's the idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, great survival skills right off the bat. I love that they all put on head coverings. They're all pretty much just ready to go. And it's really scary to leave the shuttle behind too. I think I'd be terrified because you don't know if you're going to find anything that's even remotely shelter, or obviously we know that deserts get really cold at night. And this is registered as barely a Class M moon, I believe. So it's like really pretty uninhabitable, especially when Picard, gets some like rocks on him and he's dying. Like it just starts escalating because of the idiot and his desire to have water. And
yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for Picard's elf eyes, I would never even have seen the cave in the first place either. So,
literally, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a great example of not only his survival skills, but like him using leadership in a crisis, because he immediately has to establish not that he's leading, but that he's got the best plan. They're both captains and he respects that, but he's like, I've got a pretty good plan. We should probably do this. And they do that. And later on, he delegates tasks, to the people that he's with and trusts them to do them, and instructs the subordinates in what to do. And ultimately, he's even self-sacrificing because he pushes Wesley out of the way of the rocks and takes the hit. But Wesley is the guy who knows how to hack the water thing and eventually gets them the water that lets them survive in the first place. So even like that move was a good move, keeping the guy that could do that job alive and taking that hit himself. So it's like the 5 habits of successful captains in shuttle crashes. Like, this is a good example of what you should do.
Yeah, it was striking to me just how unflappable Picard is in this episode, because he shows no hesitation, no second guessing. He knows what to do. He's delegating tasks, like you're saying, Aaron. And it reminded me of something we didn't bring up in Attached, because once Beverly and Picard can read each other's minds, Picard makes a decision like, it's that way, let's go. And here, like, you're not sure about that. You're completely guessing.
Yeah.
And Picard says, well, there's times like in Final Mission with Wesley where even if you're not sure, you have to act confident because you have to stay optimistic, and you have to act like we're going to accomplish something. We're not going to die. We're going to get through this. And so I thought this was a really great example of how to just show confidence in this really dire situation, because I think if it was another group of people there, this would be a panic. Like, people would be really freaking out. And I don't feel a sense of danger at all, even though this is a very extreme situation.
Yeah. Picard does, though, at the end of the episode, when he's pretty sure that he's going to die, he says some very heartfelt things to Wesley, and it's a fascinating look at his character. And when you think about where we came from with "I don't like children on the bridge, shut up, Wesley," till now, when he's saying, I really envy you, and I feel like I was selfish, with your future, and talk to this guy Boothby, he's great, do that, I'm proud of you. Like, it's a very emotional sort of thing for Picard. It's probably the closest that we see in some of these episodes to despair for Picard. Like, I think he thinks that he's going to die, and so he's letting those shields down, so to speak, and he's just getting this all out.
I think it's also the fact that, this is kind of like the theme throughout all of these, we can call them stranded. You could also probably refer to them as like desert island episodes, where it's like someone is forced in this kind of dire situation. Now they can be as emotionally open as they want. It's not out of character. You can just get all that exposition out there and just dump it out in the field and let everybody know what's going on. And that's what kind of makes all these stranded episodes really great too, because you can just do that. Like, you have the freedom. The storytelling is so liberated now to allow you to just express all those emotions that you had to hide, all the subtext you had to hide for so many episodes. Now you can just say it. And yeah, it's real beautiful to see Picard finally, really have that heart to heart with Wesley, and more so Wesley showing Picard that he's an adult, and he's an adult because of Picard.
Beautiful said. Yeah, beautifully said. And I feel like this is so cathartic for Wesley, obviously very traumatic as well. Like, they're dealing with a lot, but I think that getting to finally hear that Picard is proud of him, and someone who he has seen as a father since his own father passed, I think that really getting that from Picard is so rare, because he is not one to outwardly show his emotions like that, or to really tell people when he's like impressed by them. He'll do the nod or like little subtle ways, but if you're a kid and if you're younger, it's hard to pick up on those things. And for Wesley especially, he's experienced so much of Picard's ire and so much of his just like frustration with Wesley, that getting this other side of him is just extremely important to who Wesley becomes, and I think sets a lot of those steps in motion for him. And it's just incredible to see how much Wesley shines after that, after Picard sort of emboldens him, even though, yes, he's thinking he's going to die. This puts a fire under Wesley to say, no, he's not going to die. I'm going to save him. And he does, and I love even after he finally gets the shield down, he still is just cheesy Wesley. And he still is like, it worked, and I love that. Like, he still maintains his like cute sort of like Wesley behavior while really growing into this wonderful man that he's going to become. And so just like kudos to the both of them for working through this situation together, because it could easily have gone complete to shit, you know, if they had been arguing, or just kind of if Picard had had more of his like pettiness he had with Wesley in the beginning, you know, I think it would have been really different. But they've both put in that work to respect each other more, so it pays off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Rhianna, I thank you for bringing up that point. I had written down Wesley's quote when Picard is seemingly passed out and can't hear him. He says, "I've seen you think your way out of worse situations, and I'll think our way out of this one." And that's just, you know, he's riding that wave of, we're gonna get out of here. I gotta save Picard's life, you know?
I mean, he has his father figure there. That's his role model, and he's taught him how to do these things. So it's kind of like, you know, Picard has passed on these skills, as well as Riker too. But this is a more Picard episode. But, you know, they basically have passed on these skills to this little boy who was once wearing a sweater on the bridge. Now he's in the uniform. So,
Yeah.
You know, it's the evolution of this character, and the, I guess, the culmination of their relationship too. So even after this point, I mean, the next time we really see Wesley is for the game, which is just about him trying to get it on. And then after that, we see him for the episode where he then joins the Traveler in his wild escapades.
When he like messes up in
The First Duty.
Yeah, the First Duty
Also,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
this is really the last, like, this is really the last moment until First Duty, where he has that real kind of, you know, emotional tie to him. So important episode for all the characters, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like that they phaser some rocks to make a campfire in this episode. That's an old school move.
Classic TOS.
TOS, I'm thinking about Sulu shivering,
Right, yeah.
warming up the rocks. Yeah, this is a staple episode for sure.
Has anybody ever tried that? Has anybody like taken the lighter to some rocks and see if that actually works?
How do you know which rocks?
Any rock will do.
What if it explodes? Yeah.
I have Giant Wesley here with us, Uniform Wesley, to celebrate.
Silent Wesley.
this. Yeah.
I'm gonna match my giant first contact Picard. So.
Perfect. Yeah. I do just want to say too, at the end of this episode, it's so gorgeous that like they all get saved. Of course, Picard is being helped out of the cave on this stretcher, and Wesley holds his hand like the entire way out of the cave, and they stay beside each other. And like, yeah, that just solidifies a whole new level of their relationship. And I just like, can we have Wesley in Picard season 3 for the love of God? Like, we saw him in Picard 2 season 2, but like no Picard interaction with him, and that we were robbed of that. So like we better get it.
And this is not a spoiler because Will actually wrote this on his social media. So unfortunately, according to him at least, Wesley will not be in season 3. So we're not getting more of that because he had his moment in season 2, and that's that.
That's
so
what
classic writers are just packing in too much. That's it's
giving us. They don't feel like giving us closure. It's fine.
Yeah, for Eddie.
I mean, Wesley's now Doctor Who. He's got a companion. He's living the good life.
Right.
True. Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
Well, I think this is a good time, unless we have any other thoughts about Final Mission. Okay. Well, I think this is a good time to kind of foray into the future. So I have a question for you all. We're going on to the movies. If you could be stranded, if you had to be stranded in any of these movies, would you choose Generations, being stranded in the Nexus with Picard, First Contact, being stranded in the past with Zefram Cochrane and the Borg, or Nemesis, when Picard is kidnapped by Shinzon? Let's see, Rhianna, I'm going to start with you. What's your choice for this?
I'm definitely the Nexus. Like, I'm going to be riding horses with Picard and Kirk. We're going to be having a great time, and it'll still be Christmas all the time, which is a little weird, but like, I'm excited.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Matthew, how about you?
I wasn't too sure about this because I thought like the easy answer would be the Nexus, but I'm like, would I be happy living in that life forever? You know, because I'm gonna be trapped in there, right? That's pretty much indefinite. So like, do I want to be replaying the same Hanukkah for, you know, endless eternity? So I don't know about that. And you know, First Contact, same thing. It's like process of elimination here. I'll be stuck in. For us, it is the future, but it's a pretty horrible timeline to be stuck in. Also, I mean, it's pretty dismal looking. So to me, I guess the least horrible one is actually being kidnapped by Shinzon, because at least I know like I'm gonna be getting fed. I'm gonna hang out with some Remans for a little bit, then I'm gonna go back on the ship. Like, he's not going to hold me that long, right? So, like, what's Shinzon going to get out of me that he needs to know? Really, like, is he going to get to like have an encyclopedic knowledge of Star Trek figures? Oh, that's useful. So yeah, I'm going to beam right back to Enterprise E, and that's that.
Wow,
I love this. I did not expect anyone to say Nemesis. Okay, Aaron, what do you got?
I'm just thinking about being kidnapped by Shinzon. He gets impaled on a Picard figure and then pulls it through him. It has to be
value Shinzon.
It has to be. We have to start the procedure. It has to be the Nexus because, yes, it is Cloud Cuckoo Land, it's Lotus Eating, but it's being suspended in pure joy. And as it's proven, you can leave like at any time. So once I have had enough of, the best Christmas ever, then I can realize, oh no, I'm stuck in this thing. And then I can exit and be part of the mission, to save the world or the galaxy or whatever it is. It's the one that has ultimately what seems like the least amount of lasting effect, because all three people that we meet that go to the Nexus get out of the Nexus. It's not like you're trapped there forever, although it does seem like there'd be a danger of that, though.
Sure.
It definitely could be. It feels like that's how it was kind of set up to be, like, you could just be trapped there forever because you just be stuck in that numbing loop of just having all those endorphins into your head all the time, and eventually you just forget what reality actually is. So
yeah,
it's kind of like a trap of good stuff, but eventually all good things must come to an end.
Yeah. Hey,
There you
there
go.
it is. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very
Wait a
good
minute.
place for them
Yeah.
to do that,
said the
like
thing.
actually,
said the
this isn't
thing.
great. Yeah. Yeah. Ashlyn?
I have to go with First Contact, actually, because I would just love to be back with the crew with Zephyr Cochrane, because there's so many cringy moments where Geordi's like telling him about the statue, and I would just be like, bro, like, I'm getting drunk with Troy. I'm just chilling. I don't have to do any of the science. I just have to watch and just say, First Contact Day. Like, this is not how I expected it to go down. So
And you don't have to
Right.
be with the Borg, so you're not choosing the Borg infested Enterprise, Ashlyn.
I'm probably gonna wait and like try to beam on the Enterprise like at the very end of the episode, like just stay on Earth the whole time, and then I don't get assimilated, and then I'll just be like, all right, peace out. See you guys later.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. We all have very different answers for the movies. And I can't believe that he is pretty much stranded in like most of these movies. When we
Yeah.
were realizing that, I was like, wow, this is just a classic, like we said with Gambit, like it is a sort of a classic way to really make the stakes high if someone is like trapped in a place and you have to sort of finesse your way out.
Yeah, and then some comments from our viewers. We have MC says the Nexus because I can live my best TOS fantasy, which is very reasonable. Let's see. Yeah, so thank you for your input. And then lastly, before we wrap up today, I want to say thank you to both of you for joining us. And I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for Jean-Luc going into season 3. What kind of stranded tools? What has he learned? What can he take in to this final season that is going to like aid him? So Rhianna, I'm going to have you go first. What suggestions do you have for Jean-Luc?
Sure, let me let my cat out. He's running in and out. So I have a couple suggestions for Jean-Luc. First of all is just keeping his cool. I think that a lot of Picard's best moments are when he is not hindered by emotion. So even if someone gets kidnapped like in his place, or he has to go figure out how to save somebody, or he gets kidnapped, like keep being your cool self, Picard. Also, remember all your first aid. Remember that also you have people around you. Hopefully, if you get stranded this season, hopefully it'll be like season 2 of Picard, where they're all stranded back in time together and they can like kind of work together to figure out all of this craziness, because I think that Picard sometimes suffers when he's by himself stranded. Obviously, it's a lot harder when you don't have a crew behind you. And I think, honestly, I'm just curious to see how he would be sort of, because he's not in this like as big of captaincy role anymore, so if he does get stranded in season 3, we even see that season 2, he's the captain figure, but through a lot of it, like the crew are completely split up and going through their own personal things, and Picard's going through his own personal trauma of remembering himself stranded in the cellar when he's stranded in time. So he's going through a lot of his own stuff, and so I think it will be interesting in season 3 if there happens to be a stranding, that hopefully he'll be with more people to get the assistance he needs.
Great point. Aaron, what have you got? What are you trying to remind Picard?
It's hard to say because he's been through so much, and even just in the last 2 seasons of Picard, he's been through so much. So I guess that I would say that even though so much has changed, he's so much older. He's a robot now, or an android?
Question mark.
Yeah.
Some things still work, and I guess we don't know the details about Amanda Plummer's villain character. We don't know necessarily what the threat is fully, but the old tricks always work. Kirk showed us that, sometimes you can there's things that you can rely on. And so all the skills that he's used throughout these episodes, throughout the run of TNG and in his career as the captain of the flagship of the Enterprise, I think just sticking to those things, he's had 2 seasons of Picard where he's expanded it. He's looked back on his life and he's grown as a person and a character, but this is back to basics. He's got to go use the Picard maneuver, do that, bring out all the old things, trap him in an energy field on the bridge, something like that. That's what I think, go back to the old stuff, the old ways.
Love this. All right, Matthew, what are you telling Picard?
There's not much I need to say to him, I don't think, because, and I don't think it's even going to be a spoiler. I think this is going to happen at some point. I'm pretty positive Picard will be captured by Evil Plumber, and he will be isolated from the entire crew. And, we know that Picard has survival skills. We know Picard is diplomatic even throughout these situations. And like everybody's kind of said, he knows what he has to do in these situations. But I think the bigger thing with the Picard series has been more so that it's not necessarily about being stranded on another planet. It's more about being stranded within yourself. And we saw that especially in Picard season 2. And even in season 1, like I think back to when he went on the Borg cube for the very first time and all his memories came rushing back to him. And he was by himself, essentially. He wasn't stranded, but he was by himself and he was stuck on his own island. And likewise in season 2, we saw little boy Picard stuck in his own mind in that trauma. So I think Picard has to remember who he is. And that's what I tell him is just remember who you are, because you already know your skills. You have all these tools at your disposal, but don't forget who you are. And I think the greatest lesson he probably learned was in Chain of Command, which is keep that dignity, but not even just that. It's just literally remember who you are, what you've accomplished, what you've done. You can overcome whatever is thrown at you, whether it's by yourself or with your friends. You can rely on everything you've learned, everything you know, all your life experiences, because you are the Picard. So he can pursue anything he wants to.
The Picard is wise.
Yeah. Exactly.
Picard is linear.
Yes.
Ashlyn, how about you?
There's
Any
not much
tools to add.
You said it all, everyone. Great answers. I really, really think we're gonna get a whole Picard. We've finally have seen him go through so many trials, and I think he's just raw Picard, raw Jean-Luc in season 3. So I think as long as he can channel who he is, as everyone's saying, he's gonna be fine. And I'm really, even in his age and his new robot body, any kind of stakes, I'm just not worried. Could he die? I don't know. I am worried about that, but we'll just see what happens.
We'll just cross that bridge when we get there.
Exactly. Well, we only have about 5 more days to go, so we'll have the answer soon, at least in the premiere episode. So, wow. Thank you both for joining me. I love this almost 2-hour discussion about Picard being stranded.
Epic.
But it's to be expected when we have 3 podcasts that go very in depth about everything. So I'm just so thankful for your insights and just what a great time this was. Matthew, where can people find you? Social media? Where can they listen to your podcast?
I have my little Galoob Picard right here. So if you want to check out Trek Untold, it's available on all major audio platforms. So iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, whatever the heck else is out there. I don't know, Stitcher. There's tons of things I don't even know that exist, but I'm there. And also on youtube.com/@TrekUntold. And we're every Thursday, video and audio episodes coming out. And trying to remember who's coming up next week. I think what we're doing actually for this coming week is in honor of Picard. We have a guest from season 2, and this actually hasn't been announced yet on my socials. So I'm going to announce it here first. A Duras Sisters and Strange New Pod exclusive. I'm going to have Adele Pomerenke, and she was Ensign Kemi aboard the Stargazer on season 2's episode 1 and episode 10.
Yay! So exciting!
Congratulations! That's so awesome.
Great.
A lot of fun.
That's great. All right, and Aaron, where can we find Enterprising Individuals?
You can find Enterprising Individuals at EISTPOD on Twitter. And also, if you go to Linktree, that's linktr.ee/justenough-trope. That's our network page, and it's got all of the shows on our network. And I wanted to mention, you mentioned Picard's coming out soon. We actually have live discussions about new episodes of Star Trek every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central on our Twitch channel, which is Twitch Just Enough Trope.
Sweet.
Amazing.
Wow. Great stuff you all are doing. Yeah.
Rhianna, we completely forgot to promote our pod. So will you just give a brief
do that.
summary? What's our pod all about, and where I can tell them where to find us.
Yeah, sure. Our podcast is a discussion on a series theme. We are currently on our holodeck series, and we took a break for Picard week, but we will be back talking about the 2 Enterprise holodeck episodes here this coming week after the Picard week madness
Not
is done.
looking forward to this
Very
episode.
scared, but we will get past it. We will move on to new Trek holodeck episodes, and that is going to be an absolute blast. And also, we are just like kind of revamping our Patreon, and we have new exciting tiers and everything. And actually, Ashlyn already announced the new series on our Patreon, so patrons can get an exclusive into that. But we will be announcing it here in a few weeks. And yeah, we are just so thrilled and honored to be a part of Strange New Pod's Picard week, and truly like just to have this podcast family, sort of reunion from last year, and to see new faces here and faces from last year is just so wonderful. So thank you all for tuning in and taking time out of your day to listen to us talk about Star Trek for nearly 2 hours.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Duras Sisters Podcast. You can even find us at Tumblr. We have our live episodes up on YouTube. TikTok too. Yeah. And then you can listen to us anywhere that podcasts are found. So yeah, once again, just to echo Rhianna, thank you, Strange New Pod. We were so happy to be on Matthew's on Trek Untold's episode, which is coming up on Monday. And then we are also going to be with the Promenade Merchants podcast, talking about Picard and the women.
So Bev Love Fest coming up.
Yeah, Bev Love Fest absolutely coming up. Rhianna also opened up the week with Strange New Pod talking about their TNG Kelvin pitch. And
it was so fun.
I have to recommend you go back and listen to that one if you haven't already. So thank you, Strange New Pod. Thank you, Aaron and Matthew. We are just so happy to talk about Stranded Picard. And everyone, please keep tuning in for the rest of the week, and we will be happily guided right to the premiere of Season 3 Picard. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Live long and prosper.
Thank you.